Shiny Pokemon have been a beloved inclusion to the Pokemon series since their introduction in Generation 2. So one would think that their inclusion in the fan-favorite spin-off series Pokemon Mystery Dungeon would be a no-brainer. While most fans know that they were included in Rescue Team DX, a lot of fans don't seem to be aware that this wasn't their first appearance in the series, as one older title included them as well. Oh, wait, right. Gates to Infinity had that shiny Ho-Oh boss battle. Make that 2 older titles. No, what I'm talking about are the Japanese-exclusive WiiWare trio of Mystery Dungeon titles, which I'll be referring to using their names from the not-so-recent-anymore fan translation project. Keep Going Wildfire Adventure Squad, Let's Go Tempest Adventure Squad, and Go For It Radiant Adventure Squad. There are 36 Pokemon who have shiny forms programmed into these games, who you're seeing on screen right now. Some of these Pokemon are obtainable with the password system, those being Budew, Roserade, Hoppip, Gyarados, and Voltorb. But for the rest, they exist in the wild. Unfortunately, the odds of encountering a shiny in these games aren't known. However, what seems to be known is that the more enemies you defeat, the more likely you are to encounter a shiny. From a bit of digging I've done in this game with Dolphin Memory Engine, I've found that this game does track how many enemies you've defeated. However, this counter resets when you go to the next floor. It does, however, track all enemies you defeat, not just the ones that can be shiny. While I'm not 100% certain on this being the case, it seems that this is the value being discussed. And so you want to try and maximize the amount of enemies you defeat on each floor, not just the amount that you spawn. WiiWare nerfs the accuracy of every room ranged attack, so if you plan to use a 1-room orb and spam those, you're going to want to make sure you have a stack of multiple room ranged attackers. Shiny Pokemon will start with the maximum possible belly stat of 200 in all dungeons they participate in, which normally has to be achieved by eating extra apple items at max belly. Even if you're unfamiliar with the shiny coloration of a given Pokemon, shiny Pokemon in this game continuously blink as a visual indicator, but this goes away after Recruitment. Speaking of Recruitment, wild shinies in these games will bypass their species recruitment rates altogether and will automatically ask to join the team if possible. Shown here by this Ampharos I modded into a level reset dungeon trying to join. Ampharos has a negative 11.6% chance of joining the team, and because you're below level 15 and can't bring items into this dungeon, it can't possibly try to join at all unless it's shiny here. When I say automatically try to join if possible though, I mean that the Pokemon still has to be in a situation where they can normally ask to join the team. In order to do this, the Pokemon must be adjacent to the leader or its stack when defeated. Stacks are this game's gimmick mechanic that allows your team or wild enemy Pokemon to pile on top of each other and act as a single unit. The final blow to the Pokemon you're trying to recruit must have been dealt by your leader or one of the Pokemon in your stack. It also can't be because of residual damage such as poison status or weather. The specific enemy you're trying to recruit also must be the bottom of the stack it's in or not in a stack at all. So if your shiny was in the middle of an enemy stack, you'd want to use a throwing item such as a stick or a Geopebble to break the stack. The last condition is that the shiny can't have been in either the Mythic dungeon of your version, or can't have been in the first visit to the Dubious dungeon of your version, as recruitment as a whole is disabled in those instances. I'm not even sure if shinies can appear in those instances, but this is the time period where Pokemon games didn't typically shiny lock unobtainable Pokemon, so I wouldn't doubt that being the case. There is a strange oddity about the 36 Pokemon that got selected for this purpose, though. Their distribution. You see, almost every Pokemon in these games is version exclusive, most likely because of space constraints only allowing 15 dungeons per game. Now, that alone when it compares to most other Pokemon games is weird, but not really the issue. The issue is that a good majority of the shinies that are version exclusive happen to be version exclusive to the same version, Tempest. Tempest has 16 exclusive shinies to it, which is more than both Radiant and Wildfire's exclusives combined, as they only get 5 and 6 exclusive shinies respectively, but that's also more than the total shinies that are available to every game, as there are only 9 that every version gets. If you include the 9 shinies that every game gets, Tempest has 25 available to it, while Wildfire only has 15, and Radiant only has 14 shinies available. It's not like they spread them to each dungeon in these games or something either. Radiant Squad cannot encounter a shiny, period, until the last dungeon of the main storyline, as that's where Skorupi spawns. In fact, aside from this dungeon and Radiant Summit, Radiant can only encounter shinies in dungeons where both of the other 2 games can encounter shinies, because the shared shinies are in dungeons which are equivalents in all the games. The enigmatic dungeons have the Wurple line, The secret dungeon of your game will have Shuckle, and the bizarre dungeon of each game contains the Caterpie line. This is a little better in Wildfire, as Voltorb is always available, and there's a few opportunities in the other early game dungeons to shiny hunt as well. However, this still doesn't compare to Tempest only being unable to encounter shinies in 3 dungeons where recruitment is enabled. One of those dungeons, Unknown Resort, is just the place where they dumped all the unknown, meaning it wasn't going to be allowed for any version anyways, and I'd imagine most people wouldn't particularly be interested in hunting here anyways. Despite this really stupid distribution issue, and the overall weird inclusion of shinies in these games, that doesn't really change the fact that I'm very fond of the WiiWare PMD games, and if you don't just play PMD for the story and actually like the gameplay, and don't mind that the games are way harder than all other entries in the series, I'd certainly suggest you give these games a try with the English translation patch that was made available a few years ago, which is linked in the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all for my next project. Later on, boys, and as always, take care. Oh, hello there, Nidoran. Something doesn't look quite right here. I'm sure it's nothing.